تقدم الدرس الأستاذة قدوش مديحة.
Welcome dear third year learners into another lesson in the subject of English. Unit 3, It's a Giant Leap for Mankind, theme Astronomy and the Solar System. The lesson is Reading and Writing. Title, Life on Other Planets. So the learning objectives for today's lessons are predicting the topic of the text and introducing keywords, revising and consolidating expressing concession and conditional type 1 and 2. Finally, writing an argumentative composition. So before we start our lesson, we must have a lead-in or a warm-up, or what do we call in English a pre-reading. And pre-reading task is you're going to match the words 1 to 4 with their appropriate definitions from A to D. As you can see before you, you have a chart, 2 columns. The left columns we have words and their definitions are on the right side. So you need to match the words with their right definition. You have to pay careful attention. Read the definition carefully, then try to find its right word. So feel free to pause the video and do the activity on your own and with ease. So, did you get it? So let's take a look on the solution. As you can see, the first word Kepler is with C. Kepler is a German astronomer. Maybe you know it by the word Kepler's law. And second requirement with B. And the third word outer space with A. And finally gravity with D. Good, did you get it? Good, excellent. So let's move on to the next step. So you have here your text. This text was chosen to accommodate the levels of learners, all the levels of learners, whether be it a intermediate, strong, slow learners or strong learners. So before you read this text, you have to look at 3 things. You have to look at the title, then the number of the paragraphs, then the source of the text. The title of the text might give you an idea or a main idea of the text, and the source might tell you from where did you get this text. Is it an article, is it a report, or etc. And the number of paragraphs might help you in other questions in other times. So you read the text carefully, you sort out the words that you do not understand, then you go and do the other activities. So activity number 1 is task 1, circle the right answer. So this is a common question in your baccalaureate exam, to say the text is a newspaper article, B, a website article, or C, a scientific magazine extract. So feel free to pause the video, go back to the text and look for the answer. So the answer for this question, you have to look at the source. You have to look at the source in order to find out if the text is a newspaper article or a website article or a scientific magazine extract. Again, feel free to pause the video, then answer your question. So, did you get it? So let's take a look on the answer. So the answer is the text is a website article. So did you look at the answer? Did you get it? Good. So let's move on. We have task 2. Let's read the question. Say whether the following statements are true or false according to the text. So this type of question, you have to answer it according to the ideas of the text, not your understanding, according to what is in the text. So let's take a look on the statements. You have 4 statements and you have to say if they are true or false. Feel free to pause the video, then answer on your own, and you can answer by saying if they are true or false, and you can correct if the statements are false. So let's take a look on the answer. So the answer is, so the first sentence, the Kepler mission hopes to discover iron in space, is false. Second, Kepler has found 2 planets that are not in our solar system. It's yes, it's false. The third sentence, a planet can support life if it has water and air. It is false. Finally, question sentence number 4. NASA will spend about $600 million on the mission. It is true. Did you get it right? Good. So let's move to the other question. So we have task 3. In this task, you are required to reread the text, then to answer the following questions. You have to read the questions carefully in order to understand them and in order to have the correct answer. So question number 1. What is the Kepler Space Telescope looking for? Question number 2. Is it a good idea to spend $600 million on space exploration? Question number 3. What would happen if the Kepler mission found other life forms on other planets? So question number 1, you would find its answer in the text, but question number 2 or 3 is a question that targets your personal opinion. So I repeat, the first question you answer it according to the text, but question 2 and 3 you answer it according to your personal opinion. So feel free to pause the video, go back to the text, reread it, then you can answer the questions. So let's take a look at the answers. So the first answer is, the Kepler Space Telescope is looking for what? It's looking for other planets that can support life. So we have chosen some sample answers for question 2 and 3, and they are, so sentence 2, I think that it is a good idea to spend $600 million on space exploration because it will give us a better understanding of our home planet, Earth, and offers opportunities to discover the origins of life and ways to protect the environment on Earth. Again, feel free to answer in a different way. This is according to your personal opinion. The third answer, if the Kepler mission found other life forms on other planets, we would solve many problems on Earth, such as population growth and reduce pollution. So again, any appropriate answer is acceptable because this is you answer according to your personal opinion. Another tip concerning these types of questions is that they require synthesis and personal views. So you can answer according to your own words, not to copy down what is in the text. So these answers are just sample answers, okay? So let's move on to the next task. So we have task 4. Let's read the question. What or who do the underlined words refer to in the text? So this is a common question that you find in your exams at school or in the baccalaureate exam. So we have two words. The first one is there. You find it in paragraph number 1. And the second word is it. You find it in paragraph 2. So feel free to pause the video, go back to the text and find both words and say to what or who do they refer to. So, did you get it? Okay, so let's take a look at the answer. So we have there in the first paragraph it refers to galaxy, and it in the second paragraph it refers to Kepler Space Telescope. Did you get it right? Yes? Good. Excellent. So let's move on to the other task. So task 5 is about grammar consolidation. So here we are going to revise and consolidate some grammatical points. So the first part, or part A in task 5, is question number 1. Refer back to the text and say what do the underlined sentences express. So feel free to pause the video, go back to the text, and you will find two sentences that are underlined and say what do they express. So let's move on to part B. Put the verbs between brackets in the right tense. So you have sentence number 1. If we, between brackets, to discover other life forms in our galaxy, we would be happy. So where is the verb? Yes, it is to discover. You have to put it into the right tense. You pay careful attention to the sentence. What type of sentence is it? Sentence number 2. We would ask a lot of questions to aliens if the Kepler mission to succeed in finding life in space. Again, the same with the first sentence. You have to pay careful attention to the type of sentence and you put the verb into the right tense. So we arrive at part C. Link the following pair of sentences with the connector between brackets. Make changes where necessary. So you have sentence number 1. Space exploration requires billions of dollars. This is the first sentence. The second sentence is many nations favor it. So you have two sentences and you need to connect them or link them or combine them with the connector between brackets, which is, yes, it's although. Although, what does although express? Yes, it expresses concession. It expresses concession. We have, for example, although, however, even though, and etc. They express concession. And when you link the two words to two sentences, you have to make the necessary changes. So feel free to pause the video and do the exercises or tasks on your own or with your friend. So let's take a look at the answers. So let's take a look at the answers. So we have the answer to part A. So we have given you the two sentences that were underlined in the text. We have the first sentence is, if a planet is Neptune-sized, 4 times bigger than Earth, it has very strong gravity and too much air. Second sentence, will we be sad if we discover we are alone in our galaxy, or happy if we find that we share it with other life forms. So as you can see, both sentences, they express in fact condition, or they are if conditional sentences. But so I repeat, both sentences express condition, but we have the first sentence, it expresses or talks about a scientific fact, whereas sentence 2, it expresses or talks about a hypothesis. So as we know, the if conditional has many types. So which type of conditional that expresses a scientific fact, and which type of conditional that expresses or speaks about or talks about a hypothesis? So let's see together. So we have if conditional type 0. If conditional type 0. In the if conditional, we have the if clause and we have the main clause. So go back to sentence number 1. If a planet is Neptune sized 4 times bigger than Earth is the if clause, and it has very strong gravity and too much air is the main clause. And we said it expresses a scientific fact. So it is if conditional type 0. Why? Because we have the if clause, it's if plus subject plus verb in the present simple, and the main clause, it's subject plus verb in the present. So when we have a sentence or if conditional that corresponds to the rules of if conditional type 0, it explains a scientific fact. When we say it is a scientific fact, it means that is always true each and every time. For example, like scientific experiments, they are in all cases they are true, and we use it with and we use the if conditional type 0 to speak about scientific facts or truths. So we have, again I repeat, if plus subject plus verb in the present simple, and equals subject plus verb in the present simple. So let's go back to sentence number 2. Sentence number 2 is if conditional type 1. Again, we have the if clause, if plus subject plus present simple plus object equals subject plus will, or the negative form of will, which is won't, plus stem, meaning the verb in the infinitive without the to, plus object. And this type of conditional, we use it to express a hypothesis. So the if conditional type 1 is not like the if conditional type 0, because whereas the results of the if conditional type 0 are always 100% true and always happen, in the if conditional type 1 the results they may happen. There is a big possibility, a big chances they are going to happen, but there is still the chance that they will not happen. It's not 100% true or correct. So let's move on to the part B. So in part B, we said that you are to put the verbs between brackets into their correct tense. So we have seen if conditional type 1 and type 0. So let's see another type of conditional. So let's read the answers. If we discovered other life forms in our galaxy, we would be happy. So second sentence, we would ask a lot of questions to aliens if the Kepler mission succeeded in finding life in space. So you can see in the first sentence we have started with the if clause. When we start a sentence with the if clause, we put a comma between the if clause and the main clause. But whereas in the second sentence we have started with the main clause. As you can see, after or before the if we don't have a comma. Okay? Can you identify what type of conditional you have used here? Yes, you have to identify it. You look at the verb in the if clause. In what tense is it conjugated, and the verb in the main clause. So in the if clause we have the verb discovered. Discovered is conjugated in which tense? Yes, it's in the past simple because we have the suffix ed. And the second clause, it's would plus be. So what type of conditional is this? Is it 0 or 1? Yes, it's not 0, it's not 1. It's if conditional type 2. So let's take a look at if conditional type 2. It's if plus subject plus verb in the past simple plus object equals, or subject plus would plus them plus object. What do we use this type of conditional for? We use it, yes, to express imaginary situation in the present or the future. So if conditional type 2 is not like if conditional type 0 and 1. This is an imaginary situation. It's unreal. But even though it is unreal and imaginary, it still has the chances to happen. But those chances are very small. Maybe, for example, the first sentence, if we discovered other life forms in our galaxy, we would be happy. So the event of discovering other life forms in our galaxy may not happen, for example, this year, this next year, in the next 20 years, but for maybe in the next million years they would find other life forms. So there is a possibility that it's going to happen, even though it is very, very small. Okay? Yes. So let's move on to the second, or the part C. So I read the answer. Although space exploration requires billions of dollars, many nations favor it. So we asked you to link two sentences with the connector although. So let's see how we connected it. We said that although space exploration requires billions of dollars, comma, many nations favor it. So although sentences, they have two clauses. We have the subordinate clauses and we have the main clauses. The subordinate clauses are with although. And as you can see, we started the sentence with although. So we started our sentence with a subordinate clause. And when we do so, we add a comma before we write our main clause to make the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause. So let's go back to although. What does although express? Yes, it expresses concession. Good. And as you know, in English, we don't only have although to express concession. We have many other connectors. Can you give me examples of them? Yes? Yes, good. So let's see. We said that although expresses concession. We have not only although, we have though and even though. So though and even though, they are like although. They require a subject plus verb plus object types of clauses. So I repeat, in although, though and even though, they require clauses that are formed as such: subject plus verb plus object, comma, when we start with the main clause, although plus subject plus verb plus object, okay? Like the sentence you have before you. So do you have other examples? Yes, we don't only have although, though, and even though to express concession. We also have in spite of, plus noun, noun phrase, adjective plus noun, gerund, meaning stem plus ing, comma, subject plus verb plus object, despite, and in spite of, the fact that, plus subject plus verb plus object, comma, and the rest of the sentence. So let's try an example using in spite of plus noun phrase. So we can say, we use the same example, in spite of space exploration requiring billions of dollars, many nations favor it. And we can use another example with the same connector. In spite of requiring billions of dollars, many nations favor space exploration. So what did I say? Let's revise. I said we can use in spite of. I gave you two examples. The first example is in spite of space exploration requiring billions of dollars, many nations favor it. And the second example is in spite of requiring billions of dollars, many nations favor space exploration. So the first example is false, and the second example is correct. When you use in spite of plus gerund, you have to start with the gerund, not with a noun, okay? Pay careful attention to the mistake, okay? So let's move on to the next step. So the next step is post-reading. So in post-reading, you have a class discussion type of task. So in this task, you are going to set yourselves into groups, small groups. The groups may be of 2 persons, 3 persons, whoever is with you. So what you're going to do, you have a statement. It is worth the expense and risk to make a manned flight to Mars. So you have here a statement. So what you're going to do with this statement is you are going to either agree or disagree with it. Are you with saying that it's worth the expense and risk to make a manned flight to Mars, or are you not? Okay? Or are you not? And you can support your opinions using arguments or ideas. For example, task 2 in while reading. Okay? Yes? So let's move on to another task. So this task is called a extensive reading. We have chosen this type of task in order to enrich your skills and so we have chosen this type of exercise. We called it extensive reading. We have chosen it in order to enrich your skills and to pave the way to writing. So let's take a look. So you have the first task is pre-writing. So what you're going to do in pre-writing? Pre-writing means before you start writing, you have to organize your ideas. And we have chosen certain types of tasks to help you organize your ideas. So the first task is answer the following questions or question. So we have chosen one question. What do you think are the most profound reasons that you have to justify scientists' launching of space missions? So we have chosen this specific type of question in order to pave the way for your writing. So to generate some ideas before you start, try to familiarize you with the theme or the topic of the writing. So this type of question you can answer it in groups or individually or in pairs. Any type of answer is accepted because this is a answer according to personal opinions and views. But even so, we have given you a sample answer. So the sample answer is, when you speak about personal beliefs and opinions, you have to use certain expressions. For example, I think that, I believe, I firmly believe, and etc. So we say, I believe that the most profound reason behind scientists' launching of space missions is to explore, to stretch, to search, to scout, and to investigate space in search for life on other planets. So this is a sample answer. You can answer in any way you want. Okay, so let's move on to task 2. So task 2 is a sort of a reading activity. So read the following extracts, say which are for space exploration, which are against, and which are neither for nor against. You can work in pairs, small groups, and you can add more ideas. So the next extracts, they speak about space exploration. As you answered that we launch space missions in order to explore space. So our theme for today is space exploration. So this extensive reading is used in order to help learners to pave the way for the writing. So as you can see, we have a number of extracts. So these are the extracts that you are going to classify into 3 categories. You read them carefully and say which ones are for space exploration and which ones are against exploration, and there is a one extract that is neither for nor against space exploration. So feel free to pause the video and read the extracts in order to classify them. So did you get it? Good. So let's take a look at the solution. So as you can see, we have classified the extracts into 3 columns. So the first column, arguments for, so extracts B, D, F are considered as arguments for space exploration, and we added the other ideas just to help you to jot down some ideas for arguments for space exploration. For example, help our understanding of the universe, many other advancements made in medicine, and etc. And the middle column are for arguments against. So extracts A, C, and E are against space exploration, and again we added 2 other ideas to support these arguments against space exploration. For example, difficulty in finding life-sustaining water off the Earth, waste of fuel to fly rockets, polluting the atmosphere, environmental problems. Lastly, extract G is neither for nor against. It just speaks about space exploration in general, and that's it. Okay? So we have arrived at task 3. In task 3, you're going to see a situation of communication or situation of integration where you are going to reinvest what you have learned so far. So let's take a look at the situation. Algeria has recently joined some nations and engaged in space exploration. It has devoted a large budget to fund this mission. So think about it. Algeria joining the USA, the United Kingdom, in space exploration, and it has devoted a large budget, meaning large or huge sums of money. So it is expensive. What do you think the people of Algeria would say? So that's why we're going to ask this question. Do you think it is worth the expense and risk for a such risky program while the country is suffering from many problems? So what do you think? Is it worth? Is the mission of space exploration worth this large budget or not? Do you agree or do you disagree? So, what you're going to do, you are going to write an argumentative composition by defending or refuting the statement above. So you're going to write an argumentative composition where you are going to defend your opinion if it is for, or refute the statement if your opinion is against such idea of having a large budget to fund the mission to space exploration by Algeria. So you can organize your ideas or arguments, whether be it for or against. Then before writing you have to organize your composition. So that's why you need a layout. In a composition you have 3 parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So let's look at the introduction. The introduction, you generally speak about or explain the main idea of the whole composition. Body, you have 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph, you explain why you are for the statements, why you are defending it, and the paragraph 2, you explain why you are against this statement, using of course arguments, whether in paragraph 1 or paragraph 2. Lastly, we arrive at the conclusion. Generally the conclusion is about a summary of a personal opinion, so that's why we gave you a sample of a conclusion. In conclusion, I firmly believe that space program should be supported financially, as there is a need for the whole world to work together to improve the communication and fight against the environmental problem. So the arguments that you are going to use in this layout or in this composition, you use them from the already generated ideas in the chart and the added ideas. Okay, so in this layout is called a block pattern type of organization for the argumentative text. In the block pattern you have, it's the general organization. You have the introduction and you have the conclusion, but the body, you have 2 parts or 2 blocks. The first block you only write the arguments that are for a statement, okay, like you have here. And the second part or the second paragraphs, you only speak about arguments that are against. And the conclusion, you add your own personal view. Okay, so let's see further. I repeat, there are several ways to organize an argumentative composition. You can use a block pattern or a point-by-point pattern. So let's take a look at the block pattern another time. So as you can see, the block pattern, it has the same organization: introduction, body, and conclusion. The difference here, where it is different here, is the body. The first block, you write a summary of the other side's arguments, and then you rebut, or you must have a rebuttal to each argument in the summary. The second block is where you add your own personal arguments, and the conclusion is of course a summary of your own point of view. So let's take a look at another pattern, which is point by point. So the point by point pattern is very different from the block pattern. So in the block pattern you divide the arguments in 2 blocks, but in the point by point pattern you do the both in the same time. So First, you have the introduction and you have the conclusion. The introduction, you explain the issue, you include the summary of the other side's arguments, and of course the thesis statement. And the conclusion, you as well make a summary of your point of view. But the body is quite different from that of the block pattern. So in the body of the point-by-point pattern, you have 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph, you state the first arguments of the other side, and then you must have a rebuttal with your own counter argument. And you do the same with the paragraph number 2 and paragraph number 3. So in point-by-point pattern, you do what you would have done in the block pattern at the same paragraph. Okay? Clear? Yes? So, in order to have a coherent piece of writing, you must use link words, the right link words and functional language. So for this type of composition, where you use arguments and you speak about your opinions, you have to use expressions that correspond to personal opinions. For example, you have, as far as I am concerned, I think that not only, but also, there is no doubt, on the one hand, on the other hand, however, space exploration is, in spite the fact that, or if.
شكرا على المشاهدة. لا تنسوا الاشتراك في القناة، الضغط على الجرس، الإعجاب بالفيديو.